Today, this is going to be our first presentation in the speaker series of the North Carolina Coalition on Aging's Health Equity Committee. We're excited to have Betsy with us today and want to let everyone know that this will be on the website, the recording, and we will be taking a break over the summer, but then we're going to be back in the fall. So please watch the newsletter for any events or presentations and hot topic notices. And if there is a hot topic suggestion you may have, please let myself or Dr. Daryl Fulmer know, because we're always open to suggestions of topics that might be good for us to have presenter come on. So I will turn it over to Katie.
Good morning, everyone. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Katie Kutcher. I'm with the Central Carolina Area Agency on Aging, and I have the honor to introduce our speaker for today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Betsy Barton. Betsy is the Director of Special Projects in the Community Engagement Department at Transitions LifeCare, a nonprofit which serves 10 counties in Piedmont area of North Carolina. She is particularly committed to reaching Black and African American, Latino and Hispanic, LGBTQ, and Native American communities, as well as individuals with mental health challenges whose voices are often marginalized in healthcare. She received her master's in public health degree from the UNC School of Public Health, and we're grateful to have you here with us today to share your expertise. So Betsy, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. And everybody hear me okay? All right, great. So, I always start with, in my mind, who's in the room. And, what I notice with this group is that we have a pretty sophisticated group of participants here. So I have some slides and I have some information and lots of resources, but I'm also happy to go wherever the dialogue leads us today. So, having said that, I'm going to share my screen. And what I love to do is when I'm in person, let me share the sound. Yep, okay. All right. And of course, the little black bar of Zoom is right over the thing for how to do my slides. Give me a sec here. All right, so I love to start with a little exercise. If we were in person, we would do cross the line exercise. But since we're here on Zoom, I'm going to say, let's do a raise your hand kind of thing. So, and you can just use the raise your hand function to do this. So let's start with raise your hand if you like pineapple on your pizza. This is a test of the system. See, some hands raised, some hands not. Okay, the pineapple people, this is the cool people. Sorry, the rest of y'all, then, okay, you're just who you are. All right, and now hands down, and then raise your hand if you know what an advance directive is. Excellent. Okay. And one person who has your hand raised, come off mute and tell me one thing about an advance directive. I'm trained as an educator, so I wait 11 seconds after I ask a question. All right, y'all.
It helps to make your wishes known.
Okay, your wish is known. And wishes about what, Mary?
Into life decisions and future care, things of that nature.
Excellent. Perfect. All right. Thank you. So people can do an advance directive about whatever kind of healthcare wishes they have. Most people who really care about having limited intervention at the end of life are more prone to do an advance directive, or it's more important to them to do an advance directive because the default is do everything, maintain life at all costs, or as much as possible. So those of us who maybe are not interested in just being alive, but not really living and actively participating in life. Um, you know, folks like that, and that's me, just FYI for y'all. We're the ones who really need to do an advance directive in particular, but everybody needs to do an advance directive. Lots of times I'll hear folks say, well, you know, I don't want to, I want to let God decide, or, um, I want them to do everything. I'm like, great, do an advance directive that says that. If you want to make sure that no one uses blood products in your care, put that in your advance directive. If you want to make sure that you know, the brother-in-law that you never got along with is not at your bedside when you die, put that in your 5 wishes form. Anything can go in there. All right, great. So now raise your hand if you have had a conversation with someone about their end of life wishes. Excellent. And so one of you come off mute and tell me one of the things that you found out when you talked to your friend or loved one about their wishes.
I'll say it's been with my mom. Um, and it's interesting because when we first started having conversations about what her wishes were, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, they've now changed and as she's getting older. So that's been kind of interesting to hear her and then want to make sure, okay, you said you wanted to do this before, so you definitely want to do this now, kind of a thing.
Excellent. And what I love to hear in that, Rosalie, is that you've had the conversation more than once, because it takes more than once, right? We can change our minds over time. We can change our mind when something significant happens to someone that we love, or we watch an episode of The Pit, or there's a legal case happening in the county next door, which was the case of my mom. I grew up with a mom who literally every time the Karen Ann Quinlan case was on the TV, she'd say, "You see that? I don't want to be a vegetable. If I'm a vegetable, I want you to pull the plug." And, that was her exact words back in the 70s. And I remembered that. And we actually really needed that information later in life when, as happens, one little thing turns into a bigger thing and then a full cascade leading to the end of her life. Okay, so thank you. What about raise your hand if you have had a conversation with someone else about your healthcare wishes? Okay. And again, someone brave, jump off and tell me one thing that you said.
Good morning. I've had a conversation with my spouse and I've said no, I guess, heroic efforts at the end of my life. I'd rather go nicely, quietly, peacefully.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mary. Yeah. So, um, I love that because if we don't express our wishes, then we have zero chance. Or if we don't give broad hints, and then also specific and more better would be specific information. Even better would be have it in writing and legally valid, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the first thing is having the conversation. But before that, there's so many steps. We have to think about it. We have to be brave enough to think about it. We have to be bold enough to talk to someone else about it and put it out there and give lots of examples. And there's a lot of steps to it besides just talk. And then once we have that conversation, then we have to have the conversation again, over a certain period of time, when something significant happens. And we also want to make sure that people know that we may change our mind. My mentor, Dr. Richard Payne, who was an esteemed, his name was Dr. Payne, and he also was a pain oncologist, a wonderful older African American man, although I have to stop saying that because he died at the age I am now. So if he was older, well, I am older. But anyway, he used to say, Betsy, we can make all these documents, but we don't really know what we're going to want until we're at the doorway ourselves. Um, And so, we need to have those kind of complex conversations with somebody about, well, what would it depend on? And, how might my wishes change? Okay. And now, let's see, what's the last one? Raise your hand if you have an advance directive that is legally valid in North Carolina. And while we're talking about that, I'll say what makes it legally valid is that um, it could be written on a piece of paper, but it needs to have your signature, the signatures of two witnesses who are not related to you and not involved in your care, who are over 18, and all three of those signatures have to be notarized. That is the current law in North Carolina. And then it has to have a date. So there's lots of different forms that you can fill out, which we'll talk some more about at the end. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to go to my slides
One thing
now.
as you're going, Betsy, right now it looks like it's showing the version with your speaker notes. If you may have more than one screen up. It looks like if on the display settings, if you click that and do swap, it may change them out.
Mm-hmm. How's that? Are you seeing something
Nothing
different
happened. No, there you
There
go.
it is. Yep, there it is.
Okay. All right. So thanks for that little precursor. All right. So by the end of this session, I want everybody to be able to list at least three benefits of completing advanced directive, to be able to name the legal requirements for a valid directive in North Carolina, which we just did, to describe at least two insights about your own personal priorities regarding care at the end of life. So what I notice a lot with healthcare providers is that they are so used to thinking about, or any kind of helping professionals, they're used to thinking about other people, the patients, clients, families that they serve, and they rarely turn their lens of attention on their self. When I do orientation at Transitions LifeCare, well, the other day there were 9 people in the room and 0 had completed an advance directive. Sometimes there'll be 24 in the room and maybe 1 or 2 have completed an advance directive. When I recently did a workshop out in the community, one of the participants interpreted my directions as we played the Go Wish card game, and she didn't even hear it as this is about you. She said, well, I'm doing this like as if it was my mom. I'm like, well, but what about you? You get to think about you. So sometimes we have to remind people that. All right, so always start with a cartoon. Don't freak out. It's just a save the date flyer. We like to think about, nobody likes to think about death, pretty much across cultures. So, if I go do a workshop in the Latino Hispanic community or in the Black and African American community or, and almost any other group of people, they'll say, well, you don't understand. In our culture, we don't really like to talk about death. And it is true. And it is culturally unique and specific in each country that has, or for each culture, we all have our own flavor of fear and, thinking or not thinking about this. So, what I have found is that if our hearts are in the right place, when people do talk about it, inevitably they're glad that they did. They feel more relieved. So I want to give everybody out there who's listening to this webinar in the future sees it on the North Carolina Coalition on Aging website that, be the brave one, be the one who starts the conversation and start with your heart. When you start with your heart, when you start with caring, people absorb that. Who doesn't want to be cared about? All right, so most people, when we talk about advanced care planning, they talk about the financial side. I'll say, do you have an advanced care plan for your health care? And they'll say, yeah, my son can write my checks if I can't pay the rent or mortgage. It doesn't even compute that the advanced care planning umbrella has, it's really not even binary. There are many sides, there are many places under the umbrella, but most people are comfortable thinking about the financial side of things. They have a durable or financial power of attorney, or they have a burial plot that's purchased already, or they have a will. So all of those things are for another workshop and someone who's probably an estate attorney. We're talking about the healthcare side of things today. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the 5 wishes form, the DNR form, give a little overview of the most form and anything else that you all bring up, because I know that a bunch of the folks in this room teach about this topic as well. So, a couple facts to consider. 90% of people say that it's really important to talk about their end of life wishes, but only 27% have actually done so. And if you talk to a doctor, they'll say, and half of them are lying. So, but really, if we look at that 27%, that's 20% of the people in our country, according to data gathered by the Conversation Project. 27% of the folks altogether in our country. But if you disaggregate that data, if you look at different groups of people within that pot, the numbers are really different. So if you're talking about very privileged people who end up at a continuing care facility that costs, $16,000 a month or something like that, a lot of times when you get admitted, you have to do a most form, regardless of the health condition that you're in at that moment. Whereas in the African American community in general, the number looks more like 17%. In the Latino community, it looks more like 12%. And then if we further disaggregate the data, then if we split that by education level, whack any of those numbers in half for people who have less than a high school education. So we can say 27, well, it's almost a third, which is almost a half. But if we're talking about Latino folks in Durham County where I live, it's like 2%. And oftentimes, the folks who haven't talked about it are the families who end up in a prolonged or traumatic healthcare situation. Not that that can happen to anybody, but it's more likely if we haven't had the conversation. So I'm just gonna stop sharing and resharing, and then I'll reshare to help make sure that you can see this little video. All right, so I'm going to show a clip from a film called Consider the Conversation, which is not widely available anymore due to the fact that the 2 guys who created this film worked at a tiny little hospice in Wisconsin and they couldn't get the music license. Somebody had to pay for the music rights. And so they're floating out there somewhere, but they're not easily available. But I love this film. And if we had 8 hours, I would show you several other clips from this film. So it's a nice thing to have in your back pocket as a tool. In its absence, we will post later a resource page that I have, but one of the first resources on there is watching the film Being Mortal, which you can stream online for free. I always say, great date night movie, y'all. It's only 57 minutes. Get some popcorn, watch Being Mortal. And they're both beautiful films because they're story based. They're following the stories of families or couples or, whomever who are traveling through the end of life journey and the different ways that they do it and the different things that come up. So I just want to put in a little plug for watching the film Being Mortal. Or you can read the book by Atul Gawande, which is much longer, but also beautiful. All right, so let me reshare here. And what this clip is just a short clip. This one is from YouTube, actually, of an interview with a gentleman, Martin Welsh, who is a family doctor and who figured out himself, he diagnosed his own Lou Gehrig's disease. And in this clip, he's talking about how do I know what makes a life worth living? Hold on. Okay, I opened this up. You can edit this out, Mary. Shoot, now I can't find it. Well, we'll try it this way. Can you all see this screen? Okay,
I often
great.
think
Yeah.
about what I call the 100 things. Here's how it works. Imagine a list of 100 things you do most days. Some are routine, some are chores, some are pleasurable. Get out of bed and walk to the bathroom. Kiss your wife. Answer the phone. Drive your car to work. Go play golf with your friends. Brush your teeth. Write a letter, lick and seal the envelope closed, and put a stamp on it. Hug your child. Of course, we do many more than 100 things each day, but for now, just imagine 100 that are essential to the life you live. Now, if you take away one, you can still do 99. Is life worth living without being able to smell the rose in the garden? Of course it is. How about losing 2 or 7 or 23? Is life still worth living? Of course. But suppose you get to where you've lost, say, 90 things, and now with each thing taken away, a bad thing is added. You can no longer walk well, and you start falling, and it hurts. Your grip is gone, and you also suffer the ignominy of wetting your pants because of bladder spasms. You can't turn over in bed, and that also means you will get bed sores unless someone turns you frequently. Life is still worth living, but you're getting tired.
Okay, so I'm interested to hear from a couple of people. What came up for you, or what did you notice that you were when you were watching that short little clip?
Well, being older, I started thinking about, I mean, I'm starting to lose some of those things because of age. And then I started thinking about, okay, what might be next and and how do you adapt and things like that. But it's like I think at your stage in life, you probably look at it from different perspectives. But I think as you get older, it probably maybe resonates a whole lot more because you're beginning to experience some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I feel you. I feel you on that. I use this a lot in the community because I feel like it helps get people from that realm of advanced care planning is this thing off in the future that I should do and kind of brings it back to like, ooh, what if that was me? What would I want to do? So in this film, we heard from Martin Welsh, who, made it pretty clear that he did not want extraordinary measures. He had, if you watch a longer clip, he had an ALS specific advance directive that said he did not want any life-sustaining measures. So when he could no longer eat or swallow, he did not get a peg tube. When he could no longer breathe, he did not go on a ventilator. And let's contrast that with my sister Carolyn, who had Lou Gehrig's disease. She got it when she was 47. She died when she was 52. She was kind of the opposite. She was very stubborn, and she also had an advance directive. Um, but she did everything. She said, "It's worth it to me to be alive as long as I can see the smile on someone's face." But where she drew the line, which is what she put into her advance directive, is until I cannot even gesture yes or no in any way, shape, or form. So in her case, it was like, even if I move my eyeballs left for yes and right for no, um, then that's it. That's my line. And so she put that in her advance directive when 2 doctors agree that I'm completely locked in, that I want you to withdraw life support. And at that moment, all of us, we have 8 kids in my family, all of us who were still alive, we traveled out to California and we hung out and we sang and we told family stories. And she was awake anytime any of us were in the room. She was not sleeping. She was totally awake. I've never seen someone so alive through their eyes. And then, one night they said, okay, tomorrow's the day. And, we were all there when they withdrew life support and, holding her hands and touching her body and circling the bed as they withdrew life support. And, was it easy? No. But what made it easier was that she had an advance directive, that she had talked to us before she hadn't lost the ability to speak. And, that I give that example because the research shows that when we have advance directives, this is really a gift to our families and loved ones. The people who survive us have decreased rates of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, long-term, stress and inflammation, Um, so this doing an advance directive is an opportunity to just take away some unnecessary suffering in life. Some is just going to be there, but whatever we can help with, I would love everyone to help reduce that a little bit. All right, so let's see. What are you all still seeing the slide that says video clip?
Yes,
All right.
we do.
Okay, great.
There was a question in the chat box or a request to put the link to that video in the chat box. I know you're sharing the screen right now, so maybe we can share it towards the end.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can. Nope. Yeah, we'll just have to share it toward the end. Okay, so then I wanted to introduce a new resource to folks. So if you are if you're on a computer rather than a phone, and if you're computer savvy enough to open up another browser, I encourage you to go to the Go Wish, and I'm just going to paste this in again. I'm going to I pasted it into the chat early on, but I'll paste it again. So you can click this link and then it'll just take you to the browser so you can check out this. I have, well, I started out with 5,000 decks of Go Wish cards. Now I have a lot fewer because they're all over the state. But you can buy a deck of Go Wish cards. I really recommend doing that because the psychomotor act, the action of sorting the cards is it's a really helpful thing to do. And then you can look at them and rearrange them and all that, as opposed to playing online. But playing online is the second best. So what are the Go Wish cards, you may ask? This is a deck of 36 cards. The way they came up with this deck is this researcher at Duke named Karen Steinhauser did a study with 1,500 people and their caregivers and their healthcare providers about what's really matters to people, what's important at the end of life. And some brilliant person took this research and made it into a deck of cards. So each card has just one simple thing, like to maintain my dignity, to have a nurse that I trust. And then there's a wild card, so you can put in whatever's important to you. So maybe you want to have your therapy dog right there in the bed with you, or maybe you're Muslim and you believe that the saliva of a dog is unclean, and you do not want anybody bringing the therapy dog up into your bed when you can't say no thanks. So what I love about this game is it's a way, it's a springboard for other conversations. So whereas saying, oh, we got to do a 5 wishes, I need you to do an advance directive, I need to know what you want, that can be a little intimidating. This is the more southern, let's have some sweet tea, sit on the back porch, put the overhead fan on. Of course, our ceiling's going to be light blue if we're in the south, and have a little conversation about this. And so each card can often someone can say, well, it's not like exactly this I want, but what that makes me think of is that. And as the if you're playing this with someone for whom you are going to be a healthcare proxy or someone who is going to be your healthcare proxy, that's important information to share. So when they make the cards, the decks are in different colors. So let's say Katie and I were going to play together. Let's say we were the same age and we've known each other since kindergarten, and we are, paired with someone who just can't make the hard decisions that we think that we would want to make because they just love us too much. When we took my sister on life support, her husband was in the next room. He just couldn't be in that room. So we could be each other's healthcare proxies, and we're going to play the Go Wish card game together, kind of like the newlywed game, except the other end of life. So Katie's going to play, and then separately, where I can't see, I'm going to sort the cards the way I think she would sort them, and then we can kind of go through and see what's the same. Okay, you got me, and I know you got me, and I know you got me, and what's different. So then that's a conversation to have. Oh, you thought I wanted to die at home? No, I have a belief that the spirit will be trapped in the house if I die at home, and so I want to die somewhere else. Or, oh, you thought I wanted to die in the hospital? Well, no, that's not me, but I was advocating for my Aunt Bertha when she was sick because she was so sick. I didn't even think she could make it anywhere else. We just needed to stay where we were. Um, so. So that's a little bit about the Go Wish card game. Um, and the way that you play it, I don't know if you're able to go navigate to the site online, it's set up like online solitaire. Pretty much everybody knows what that looks like, but you got your deck of cards. Is this your top left from your perspective? You got your deck of cards in the corner, whatever corner that is, and you just click on it and it flips over the next card and it even reads it to you. So if you're playing with somebody who is blind, they can have the card read to them. And then you decide where you want it to go to. Do you want it to go to this is very important to me, this card, sort of important, or not important? And then you get to use the wild card to just make up your own, and you got to make that known because if it's only in your head, that's not going to help anything. Things have to be on paper. Well, have to be expressed, have to be verbalized, and even better, put it on paper because we all know that when we're in a crisis, we can't think. When I fell down the stairs last night, my daughter ran out. Oh my God, how did you fall? I'm like, I don't know. What did you land on? I don't know. I'll know tomorrow morning when things hurt. Like you don't think in that moment. Even though, hey, I'm a trained martial artist, well, I'm going to immediately flip to my side and slap the ground. I think actually I did do that. But, whether we do that or not is anybody's guess. All right. So, and if we don't get this into the chat, you can see by the link that I have on here, you don't even have to have the link. You can just write play Go Wish game online free, and it'll take you right to the site. So I recommend going to that and playing yourself. We're not going to do it here because it's just a little bit too complicated and in this short format. All right. So, but what I want to say that is playing the Go Wish card can bring up some things you didn't even think of. I have a friend who is an experienced attorney and mediator, and has been the healthcare proxy for several members of his family who have like complicated health and mental health issues. And he and his brother played it with their mom, who's about 87. And when she heard about it, she said, I want you to bring some. Let's do it when you come out here. And he called me afterwards and said, Betsy, I couldn't believe it. We both thought we knew everything that that was important to my mom. And there were some things that came up during this game that was game changers. And so, you know, I get calls all the time about, I went home and I played this with my fill in the blank. And we learned so much and we had a great conversation. So I'm a big fan of the Go Wish cards. All right. So now I want to, and again, if we had all day, I would show the whole film. But I'm going to show just a 2-minute snippet of a trailer from a film that we produced at Transitions Life Care just last year, called An Act of Love, talking with your family about serious illness and end of life. And in this little trailer kind of captures the essence of some of those things. All right. And what I love about this film is that it I won't say captures, but includes the voices of folks who are often not thought about or recognized when talking about end of life issues. And so if you like this film, you can go to the Transitions Life Care website and go to resources and community resources, and the whole film, which is 25 minutes, will be right there. All right, so let's watch this. And this is my boss and coworker Dwan starting off right on the big screen here.
People are not going to pass away from the plane dropping out the sky or being run over by a train. Most people are going to pass away from a serious illness or some type of disease. So we have to prepare for that.
In the Black church, we talk about death, we talk about the here and now, going to heaven, going where Jesus is, but when it's time to do that, nobody wants to go.
In the Black community, as far as talking about death, it's taboo.
One of our myths is if you talk about dying, you're going to make it happen sooner.
En la comunidad hispana, la etapa, digamos, como final de la vida o cuando ya tú vas a pasar a la otra vida es un tema tabú, es un tema con mucho miedo, que no se habla en las familias.
El final de la vida muchas veces lo vemos como lo más triste y no debe de ser eso. Es un proceso que todo mundo debemos de tener en la vida.
What we know is that end of life care, serious illness care, and having those difficult conversations are not taught.
It's not about death alone. It's about family and bringing together, making people comfortable so they don't have to be scared.
Reach out to say, you know, I have a loved one, and because you can't do it all by yourself.
It's an act of love to have those conversations, to be prepared, to make sure that our families are prepared.
Most people just don't want to talk about it.
An act of love. Talking with your family about serious illness and end of life.
And I'll put out a little advertisement that if there's anyone anywhere in the state watching this video, we really want to create a version of this that's culturally specific to the Latino and Hispanic community. We have a lot of raw footage that didn't make it into the film because we decided just to focus primarily on the Black and African American community. But there really needs to be a whole separate film, and really there need to be a whole bunch of separate films. But so if you ever have any extra funding, let me know. All right, I'm wondering if folks have any thoughts that they want to share having watched that little clip. Mostly, I think what's important is just every time we do something to always be thinking, who's not at the table? Who's not in the audience? Who am I not thinking about? And how can I shift things? Somebody asked me recently, an organization in Durham, an aging organization that interviewed me, and I said, I thought, you know, the most important things were asking who's not at the table and just showing up at other people's events and being present and not giving up ahead of time, not deciding for somebody that they're not ready for this information or don't want to hear it or don't want to hear it from, you know, me, say, you know, I'll just talk about myself, me as a white person, you know, my experience is when I'm the only white person in the room and I'm presenting about the topic, I lead with love and folks are completely engaged. You know, um, anybody can build trust and create that information. Back in the days when I used to do HIV Hep C's work, Dr. John Slokowski at the University at Johns Hopkins used to say, if we have a treatment attempt rate of 0, we're going to have 0% success. And it would show a little bar chart with 0. And I just thought that was brilliant. We have to try, we have to make extra effort, and we have to get folks at the table who we want to reach, and involve folks from the get-go. All right. So moving along. All right, so we talked about the forms. Now I'm just going to give a quick overview about some of the forms. And I did see a comment in the chat about the film clip, Consider the Conversation. Mike Bernhagen is still working with Rainbow Community Care in Wisconsin. He's a great guy. I helped get a bunch of interviews for him for the second film. So if you don't know that's out there, there's a Consider the Conversation 2, which features, not focuses, but has some folks talking about a woman with cancer, talking about advanced care planning and the importance of that, and interviews a bunch of doctors at Duke, like, James Telsky, who used to be there, and some other folks. So just wanted to throw that out there. He's just a wonderful guy. All right, so let's talk about some of the forms. All right, the 5 wishes form. This is just one variation of a living will. A living will is just a document that talks about your wishes. If you were unable to speak for yourself. So it's not necessarily a projected end of life. It's at any point where you're unable to speak for yourself. Maybe you're 22 and you had a stroke. Well, the day before that, you weren't at the end of your life. The day before that, you were hiking on the Appalachian Trail or whatever. So a 5 wishes form is a living will, also called a healthcare power of attorney. Just to make things confusing, we have healthcare power of attorney, the document, and then we have healthcare power of attorney, the person who is at my bedside. I always use myself as an example. At my bedside saying, Betsy needs pain medication now. Don't wait another 2 hours. Or saying, Betsy's 97. Why are you ordering a colonoscopy? She doesn't want a colonoscopy. She's 97. Even if we find something, she's not going to, we don't want to pursue treatment. So the person who's there advocating for you can be called your healthcare power of attorney, or agent, or representative, or proxy, or surrogate. All of those are words for who's going to speak for me, and who hopefully you have legal documentation of that fact. Who's going to speak for me when I cannot speak for myself? Okay, so that's the healthcare proxy. While we're on that topic, I'll just say, what kind of person do you want to pick for your healthcare proxy? Well, I want mine to be a little bit of a pain in the ass kind of person. You want someone who is not a shy wallflower kind of person. You want someone who will go, right up and not be scared to speak to a nurse or someone else at the bedside, or a physician, who's, maybe, going to be polite, but also assertive and insistent, and ready to step in when needed. All right. So the 5 wishes form, this is legally binding when it's signed, witnessed by people, and notarized. That's the law in North Carolina. In different states, it's different. So even though the 5 wishes form is valid in 42 different states, the laws for making it legally binding are different in the different laws. So if someone has one in California and they move permanently to North Carolina, I say, I think you should, you should redo your forms. Now, if someone's traveling and something catastrophic happens, pretty much people will, honor the person's form, even if the law is slightly different. And if they don't, call the ethics committee. But so the 5 wishes form, you'll Now, we're going to publish this link on the website also. You can get the 5 Wishes form for free through the Transitions Life Care website. So even though you don't have one to look at, which you would if I was teaching a person, everybody can access this through the Transitions Life Care website. We'll publish the link for you. And what it does is establishes a private little portal for you. Through that link, you go right to the Aging with Dignity website, and it'll say, Betsy, type your name, Betsy Barton, and your date of birth. And then that's my own little private portal there. I can fill out the form online, and when I'm done typing, I can print it out. And how many people are going to witness it? 2 people are going to witness it. And then I have to sign it, and we all have to be at the notary at the same time. Now, the people who witness it can't be related to me. They can't be part of and if there's any facility or medical care team, they can't be part of that team. But otherwise, and you can grab someone off the street. We do that all the time, as long as they're 18 years old. All right, so the 5 Wishes form. The first wish is, who's going to speak for me when I can't speak for myself? Who's going to make my medical decisions when I can't? You have a chance to write up to 3 names and all of their contact information there. The big thing I want to stress is I do not recommend having, all my kids are going to work together to be my co-proxy. Pick someone to lead. This makes it easier for the healthcare providers to know to have a point person, and it also just can make communication clear. Now, that doesn't mean you can't talk to everybody else. When my mom was in the hospital, we would go on, this was before the days of Zoom, we would go on freeconferencecall.com every Sunday night at 6 o'clock and talk about my mom. Almost all 8 kids came every time. It was amazing. And this was the day before the days where we knew any of this. I wasn't working in this field yet. I had no idea. And we were just very lucky. And that has shaped my life, that there was a palliative care team at that hospital and an ethics committee who were able to work with my family, who had very different degrees of understanding of my mom's wishes. Like the word murder was put out. So all that by way of saying, you can decide by committee, but have a chair of the committee, have one person, have a pecking order. All right, so that's wish number 1. Wish number 2 is the kind of medical treatment I want. What I love about the 5 Wishes form is that they approach it from the person's point of view, not so much the medical decider's point of view. So they give you some examples. What if I'm in a coma and I'm not expected to wake up? What if I have had a catastrophic injury and I have permanent brain damage and I'm not expected to wake up? And each decision, you don't have to start from A in the alphabet. They kind of give you some preset decisions, which are pretty much like a stoplight. Green light, do everything. Yellow light, well, it kind of depends. Red light, no extraordinary care. And a double red light, if it already has been started, I want you to stop it. I think that part is really important because that's really hard. I mean, it's one thing to write it on paper. It's another thing to see your mom right there in the hospital on a ventilator. And, so in my experience, people are just really intimidated. The top 2 reasons I hear is, I don't know what to write and I don't have time. Well, if we have time to watch The Pit on TV, we have time to do our 5 Wishes form. All right. So, and you can write extra notes in there. So what I learned from one of our palliative care physicians, she said, I put in mind that if I'm ever in the ICU, I want a palliative care consult early. And I thought, oh, I'm totally stealing that. Great idea. And that is now in mine. So you have the chance to write notes. I have a friend in Oregon who has I kid you not, 27-page addendum to her 5 Wishes form. She has written all kinds of stuff. She's written a letter to each of her kids. And anyway, so say what you want, put it out there, and then have the conversations that cement those things. And if you have people in your family that disagree, it's especially important to talk to the haters. You got to talk to them to say, I know you don't agree with what I want, but this is what I want. And Katie's the one who knows all about this. So listen to Katie, okay? If it ever comes to that, I'm telling you, listen, you better listen to Katie. All right, so then the next one, how comfortable I want to be. Or I really phrase that as, what does comfort look like to me? Maybe I love it when someone rubs cream on my hands. Maybe I don't. Maybe that's creepy. It's like a sensory overload. I put in mind, wherever I am, I don't care what location it is, do not put the TV on all day, or I will come back and haunt you from the grave. So you get to write what your wishes again. You don't have to start from the beginning. There's a whole bunch of them listed. And if you look at it and you say, well, it's not quite that, but it's this other thing, well, then write that other thing in the empty lines below. The next one is about how I want people to treat me. Well, the answer is treat me well, but what does that look like to you? I put in mind, do not speak to me in the third person. I hate that when someone comes in the room and says, how are we today? It's like, well, I'm actually a different person than you. How are you? How am I? Actually, I had my vet speak to me in the third person recently. How are we? That was particularly amusing to me, but I was very polite to her and kind. I did not say anything. But anyway, what are the things that would drive you nuts? Write them down, communicate them. And then the last one is kind of everything else. What do I want you to do with my body? Do I want to be cremated? Do I want to be aquamated? If you don't know what aquamation is, it's an alternative to cremation that is water-based and better for the environment because burning the body releases all these heavy metals into the atmosphere that stay there forever. Whereas aquamation, I won't get into the details, but does not end up that way. So, so you get to say like all those kind of things. Do I want a funeral? Do I want a memorial service? Oh, I went to a workshop and already wrote out my memorial service. I picked all the songs and the poems and the whatever, and here's where to find it. So that's what a 5 wishes is. Why do we think this is so scary? It's not about the form. It's about the thinking about it. So we need to start to learn to ask, how do we get people over that hump? Do we have to form little pairs where we support each other? Do we have to come to a workshop and say, we're going to have a lot of chocolate available and we're all going to sit down and we're going to draft out our form. Then we're going to go home and we're going to think about it. And then we're all going to come back and get it notarized. I always tell people, I'm a notary. I tell everyone in my organization, you just call me and you tell me you want me your form notarized and we'll meet up. Very few people, less than 5, have ever taken me up on that. But my offer is serious because advanced directives, or the lack of them, really changed my life. They've really affected my family. And I've seen it when it's good, and I've seen it when there isn't any planning. And, that sort of family trauma, that doesn't last 20 minutes or 2 years. That lasts 20 years or, even more generations. So we have, ability to address that. All right, so there are many other forms, and we really don't have time to talk about all of them, but a couple that I wanted to mention, again, on the resource page that you're going to get that will be published on the NCCOA website, there's a link to the Conversation Project, which is a national organization. They have a lot of stuff about advanced care planning, and it's in so many different languages. It's really wonderful. I really recommend it. They now have a book about how to be a good healthcare proxy, which I take total credit for because Ellen Goodman was speaking down here in Durham, and I said, y'all should do a book on this, and then it appeared on their website. So I recommend that website. For right now, we'll talk about 2 forms, the DNR form and the MOST form. So in North Carolina, not every state, but in North Carolina, we have this goldenrod, bright yellow piece of paper, and it's for a DNR form. if we're working out in the community, we really need to educate people about what does this really mean. So DNR, I love how one of our physicians explains it. He said, this means if your heart stops, do you want me to restart it? Um, you know, people have all kinds of misunderstandings thanks to Grey's Anatomy and ER. I've heard it's better on the pit and much more realistic, but people think that they can get CPR and then just jump up and also be, 10 years younger and better than they started before they had the disease. It just doesn't work like that. You can't say, I just want light chest compressions. I don't want anyone to break my ribs. You can't say, if I get to the hospital and I'm still not breathing, I don't want to go to the ICU. So it's an express train. So it needs to have, in order to be valid, it needs to be signed by a physician, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner. It needs to have the original signature on it. It cannot be a copy. So if I was ever making one of these, I'd make about 10 of them and have them all have the same date, kind of like my house key. Everybody on my block has my house key. I never have to worry about being locked out. We all are, we love each other. I'm so lucky. But anyway, my DNR form would be similar to that. It'd be like a deck of cards. All right. And notice that it can have an expiration date or not. So that's the DNR form. Most form is a medical order for scope of treatment, medical orders for scope of treatment. This is what we use in North Carolina. In other states, there's other forms called a POLST form or a MOLST form, but this hot pink most form is what we use. And I when I'm out in the community, I call it a DNR plus form. So the first part is about would I want CPR if needed. The second part is about kind of medical intervention in general. Am I more that red light category, that yellow light category, or the green light category? Kind of where am I on the needle? And then there are sections specifically about how much antibiotics would I want if they were needed. Like, do I want you to make a good effort and see if it works, or do I want a full court press? And sometimes people choose not to have antibiotics at the end of life and choose to die of the thing that is causing them to need antibiotics. And my mom was one of those people. In order to cure an infection, they were going to have to amputate her second foot. And she did not want that. That was her line. That was, if we're talking about the 100 things, she was actually over her line by then. But that ended up being the line. And so we did not treat that infection, and that is what she died from. Some people will call pneumonia old man's friend. So anyway, that's about antibiotics. And then there's also a part about artificial nutrition and hydration. In other words, food and drink at the end of life. And there's a lot of cultural things about we show love through food. But if you really, folks out in the community watching this webinar in the future, hopefully, food and water do not necessarily help at the end of life, and often they cause harm. It's like flooding a carburetor. If you're trying to start a car, you're just like trying to start that thing and you're just pumping all this gas into the carburetor. You gotta wait, wait for it to drain. The body needs different things at the end of life, and not having them does not necessarily cause suffering. Sometimes the suffering is caused by trying to force fluids or food. So we've had to figure out different ways of showing love. Maybe instead of trying to force food, we're just going to sit there and hold someone's hand. And when their eyes flutter open, there we are. So that's those two forms. And I've talked about a healthcare proxy. But I can't stress enough, I think this is the most important thing. Even though I travel all around and do advanced care planning workshops all the time, encouraging people to fill out their forms, it's important to have a form, but it's really important to have a well-informed healthcare proxy. And in my case, kind of like my house key, I want to have like 10 well-informed healthcare proxies. My 26-year-old daughter, she knows. She knows what I want. She knows what I don't want. She knows what I do for work. There's books about dying on, sitting in the kitchen all the time. And so, what has happened is we have normalized that topic. She'll still tear up if I mention it, but we talk about it. It's part of life. Death is part of life. So make sure, a couple practical things, make sure that your proxy knows they're your proxy, that you've had a conversation with them, that they can repeat back to you what you want. So what would you do if I had a stroke and I couldn't speak, and they said I was never going to be able to eat again or get up and walk around? What would you do? You got to give them a little chance to rehearse, right? Because hearing something is only 10% of knowledge. Hearing it and seeing it, 20%. Hearing, seeing, and doing is 90%. I want to make sure that my healthcare proxies that, I don't know, even better would be 100%. That they can take that information and apply it. And I know that because I have asked them to do it and they have done it. What would be hard about doing that? Oh, yeah, how would you solve that problem? Oh, yeah, you'd call your cousin. Okay. Yeah, let's make sure she knows this too. And so, you have a team. It's not just you. Whatever the conversation needs to be. I recently spoke to someone about speaking to their elderly parents, his dad, and I said, you got to go first. You got to tell him what you want and be vulnerable. And don't just put him on the spot because, hey, we're all mortal. We're all gonna go at some point too. So make sure that you know that they're in the same, we're all in the same club here called human. All right. So what if there is no proxy? In North Carolina, I don't want to talk about it too much, but just know there's a pecking order. The patient is always going to be the person we're going to ask. If you're alert and oriented, I'm going to ask you first, or the doctor, or whoever. I'm going to ask you first. Second is a healthcare power of attorney, if there is one, or a legal guardian, or someone even with a general power of attorney. Sometimes there's a little box you can check that say, oh yeah, Katie can take care of my financial affairs, and check, she can also make my healthcare decisions. When we see those at transitions, we say, hey, let's redo your paperwork because we want to have something a little more thorough and official. Only then is the spouse. So most people will think it's automatically the spouse, and usually it is. In North Carolina, we don't have common law marriage. So if you've been together with someone for 40 years and you're not married, they are down below in, like the 7th category down there, someone with an established relationship. After the spouse, it's the parents and kids over 18, majority rules. If there's no parents and kids, it's the siblings, majority rules. Then we go to anybody with an established relationship. If there's nobody, then the attending physician takes care of it. And there you go. I went through it all anyway. All right. So in conclusion, start the conversation early. Be the leader. You be the one who starts the conversation. But you also have to fill out, sign, and notarize your own forms because the research shows us if I haven't done my work, I'm less likely to mention it to you. And that is in the context of being a clergy person or any kind of healthcare provider, because we all have this secret little part in the back of our head saying, oh, I haven't done mine yet. So this unconscious bias against bringing it up with other people. So solve that problem. Do your forms. If you've done them and they're old, do them again. Talk to your healthcare proxy. Like I said, make sure they know. And, talk to the haters. Because why cause unnecessary suffering? All right. So now we have 7 minutes. People didn't have questions along the way, but I'm totally open to them. And, if you have something that I didn't bring up that you want to be in the recording, now is a great time to ask a question about it, and then we'll make sure that it's in there.
Betsy, thanks again for just real information. You've experienced some of it, so it makes it even that more special, I would say. A question about the DNR. I think that's something probably to be stressed because I have advanced care directives, but I don't have a DNR form. well, one, now I'm 60. I still want them to try to resuscitate me now, if possible. But it's kind of like that timing thing of, because that's not an automatic. That's part of the advanced care planning, or is it?
Well, a DNR does not have to be a part of someone's advanced care planning. It could, or you could or could not mention it in your 5 wishes form or in your North Carolina Secretary of State form, which is also on the resource list, links to that. So, right, it is a separate thing that if you want one, you should have it. If you don't have one, the default is always going to be they're going to try to save your life at all costs. And that's the part where it's important to, even if you don't have a DNR, to put in where is the line of at all costs for me?
I like that how you discuss that, and I'll stop after this, but just kind of like where is that line of what I would consider, okay, I want to stay in the state I'm in, or nope, I've done what I need to do and just take me out.
Yeah. And so I took when I redid mine a couple of years ago, and I took it to my doctor during my physical and said, here, she said, oh, do you need this back? I said, no, this is your copy, scan it and then shred it. And she kind of looked at me like, why are you doing this? I'm like, hey, this is what I do for a living. I got to practice what I preach. But now I know that it's in the Duke medical record. And then that means it's also accessible to UNC and, anybody else who can connect to that. I see a question from Rachel.
Yes, hi. Yeah, regarding that, just touching on what you just said, during COVID, I know there was an issue with hospitals not even looking at advanced directives or anything. If people actually physically brought them in, it was just so chaotic. I guess I'll start with that. Like, I have 2 questions. I'm a board certified patient advocate, so I work a lot with clients who don't want to talk about this. I go to death cafes. I have my advanced directives. I'm comfortable, right, talking about this. But there are those people that are like, I can't even go there. Stop. What would be a good lead in for those people that are I've mentioned 5 wishes, transitions, LifeCare, all of it. What would your recommendation be? So I guess the hospital part, what do you do when it's not being seen? And is it safe in our electronic medical records,
Well, that's a whole different workshop. But, I've decided that even if it's not, if anybody in Doge wants to look at my advanced directive, they can. So, it's the advanced directive, at least the last time that I was at Duke, it was kind of hidden. It was under the media tab. So you got to make sure that your healthcare proxy knows that it's in there to say she has an advanced directive, like look for it. The other thing is you can make copies of your advanced directive, whereas you can't make copies, you can make copies, but they're not legally enforceable, of the DNR form or the MOST form. Those are called medical orders. They have a little more oomph because, hey, a healthcare provider helped you do it. To me, my own opinion should have as much oomph, but it's just not like that. So make sure that your healthcare proxy has a physical copy of your advanced directive that they can bring, and also to point providers to look for it hidden in the medical record. If you're a DNR, there's a little flag for that at the top of Epic. But for a whole advanced directive, at least last time I was there, it wasn't there. And then remind me, what was your second question? How to start the conversation?
How to start that conversation. I'm pretty good at talking to people, and sometimes I still get that, no, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And I always say the greatest gift you can give to your family is having a plan. That is my basic line, and that includes advanced directives, right? Like, what I have copies of those. That's the other thing as an advocate. Should I have copies of the MOST form and a DNR form with me? I don't give out medical advice, but I give options.
You can't fill out one with somebody unless you're because you don't have the legal ability
No,
to sign it.
I would say bring
But
this to your doctor. Like, would that
mhm.
become a tool in my toolkit? But I
That
never
could be
really,
possible.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what I would do in the case where someone doesn't, well, one, a great resource is the Conversation Project website. They have some really,
Okay.
some of them are funny videos about like how do you have the conversation with someone, how do you start it. Um, for me, I love the Go Wish card game because all that
Yeah.
requires is someone's passive yes, no. I mean, you don't even have to have the doesn't matter. You don't have to follow the rules. You can just say, let's look at one card at a time. Is this in your yes pile or your no pile? And then they could take a picture of their whole yes pile. When we really play the game, I say, and now you only get 10 cards in your yes pile. Um,
Right.
but if you have time, or show them the link, the game is online for free.
I saw
That's
that.
what,
I love that. That is great. And are all the decks different? Like, are they all different? Like that? I
no,
just peeked. No. Okay.
they're
They're all
all
the
the
same.
same,
All
except
the
I do
same.
have them in like 20 different languages because I bought so
Oh.
many. Once you buy 7,000 decks of cards,
Oh my
they sent me all
gosh.
the different languages. So now and I also we bought them in Chinese and Spanish, and I've taught folks at El Centro Hispano, the community health workers, how to facilitate the game out in the community and talk about advanced directives. Because
Amazing.
I'm 65. I'm not going to be, working that long. So I need anybody who wants to learn about advanced directives, I really want to do a train the trainer workshop. Um, so I hope I answered your question, Rachel.
Yeah,
Anybody else got
this was
anything?
great. Thank you so much.
I guess we actually have to stop, but is there one quick last thing before we stop? Okay. Well, I will say that, folks should feel free to contact me at Transitions Life Care. My email address is bbarton at transitionslifecare.org. I'm always happy to talk to folks, answer questions, point them to resources, and yeah. So thank you so much for having me here, and it was great to see all of your smiling faces on this Friday morning.